Hi everyone, my name is Wendy Padron and I will be introducing the presentation for Group 1 on Case 2, Ford Motor Company Supply Chain Strategy. So to introduce our presentation, we will start with a few general issues. So the quote above was the Ford founder's vision, providing customers with the right product at the right time and the right place. This quote right here introduces that company had a few objectives, as well as some few facts. Information technology helped Ford's transformation throughout the enterprise. Ford's objectives were to drive out cost of supply chain and make information available instantly. Also, they wanted to improve product quality and adapt a new strategy focusing to take the complication out of the supply chain. Their main objective was to radically change its strategy and revive as a great company. The transformation was necessary as Ford faced a major challenge with its existing supply network. So with this, the objectives had a few challenges. Transforming the heavy organizational structure to center the new concept of the old business model. The old business model was no longer in play due to the shift to consumer focus from product focus. Also, the increasing competition from European and Asian car manufacturers resulted in decreasing market share, as well as the difficultiness in communication and decision-making resulted in lack of accurate demand forecasting and number of partners were staggered. Conflicting objectives among Ford company while focusing on the company profitable and the supply chain profitable.
The main stakeholders for the Ford Motor Company's supply chain strategy case analysis include internal and external stakeholders. Internal stakeholders include Ford's employees and staff members. Ford has around 370,000 employees and operations that span in 200 different countries. The supplier network, which Ford has long-standing relationships with. Senior executives and management, including CEO John Nasir. There's the purchasing organization, which is independent from product development. For external stakeholders, there's Ford shareholders, their customers, car dealerships, and competitors, which include foreign-based auto manufacturers such as Toyota and Honda. And lastly, there's the Automobile Network Exchange, which make up General Motors, Chrysler, and Ford. All three companies joined with the idea of creating consistency in technology standards and processes in supplier network.
Ford Motor Company Supply Chain Strategy, Theory and Concepts. Ford's business model, goals, and objectives were to take advantage of becoming global in the automotive industry, improving quality and reducing cycle time while lowering cost of developing and building cars. Ford's value was to improve quality by providing continuous circuits in the Ford production system between suppliers and Ford, increasing shareholder value and improving market share, lowering costs to improve customers' responsiveness. Ford's concept was unfolding the internet revolution to create new possibilities for re-engineering processes within and between enterprises using the virtual integration. Benefiting from the push-to-pull process, reducing cycle time by using order to deliver, which order to deliver and Ford production system had goals to reducing time from more than 60 days to less than 15. Another concept is Ford's production system. With level of production, Ford used retail network, which was best practices in retail distribution, and used them throughout the dealer network. using these practices to create an alternative distribution channel to compete with newly publicly owned retail chains like AutoNation. Their goal was to buy all Ford dealerships in a local market so dealers would be able to compete with real competition like GM and Toyota and Honda, creating a great customer service experience in all dealers, showrooms to have customers coming back for more. F&R was to increase business not in just vehicles, but parts and service and body shop operations. Ford's capabilities was using existing supply base, which suppliers were picked primarily based on cost. Overall, supply chain costs would include the complexity of large network suppliers. Supply base was shifting toward long-term relationships with a subset of capable suppliers who would provide the entire subsystem. Another capability is for their information technology to be deployed dramatically, enhancing material flows and reducing inventories, and substituting information for inventory. Another capability is using business to business. Internet would be extended to in secure manner beyond company boundaries into an extranet, which could connect Ford to their suppliers. Using this capability, Ford had teamed up with Chrysler GM to work with Automotive Network Exchange. That helped create consistency in technology standards and processes in the supplier network. Suppliers initiated lower costs, which led them not to manage different means of interaction with each other.
In this next slide, we'll talk about the symptoms and problems that Ford faced. Ford faced a battle to maintain an advantage in the auto industry. This is due to increased overcapacity in the auto industry as industrialized nations began developing their own export-oriented auto industries. In order for Ford to achieve an advantage in size and scale, they moved toward an industry consolidation in 1999, where they acquired Sweden's Volvo and embarked on a restructuring plan called Ford 2000. Second problem, Ford faced several thousand suppliers of production material and a complex network of business relationships. This was because suppliers were picked primarily based on cost with no regard for overall chain costs in dealing with a large network of suppliers. Decision criteria, Ford was able to foster long-term relationships with a subset of very capable suppliers who would provide entire vehicle subsystems and manage relationships with a larger base of suppliers of these subsystems. Third problem, Ford had a long order to delivery process. This is due to constraints on information flow caused by different geographical locations of team members. Decision criteria, IT was then placed within the process re-engineering organization to enhance material flow and reduce inventories, essentially allowing consumers to receive their orders in less than 15 days compared to more than 60 days.
Hello, this is Jing Jing. My part is talking about alternatives and evaluation criteria. We found three problems here about this form. The first one is the company needs to maintain advantage in auto industry. So the alternatives here is, the first one is to improve quality and the cycle times of the products. By doing so, we can stimulate sales and increase customer loyalty and customer satisfaction. And another alternative is to lower the cost by re-engineering and globalizing corporate organizations. It means make processes and products globally common. So by doing so, we can save the cost and gain competitive advantage. At the same time, the brand identity can be stronger than before. And there are two dark sides about these alternatives. The first one is to increase tangible and intangible cost, and the lack of uniqueness geographically. Let's see the second problem is the company have a very complex network of business relationships. So I think the alternative to solve these problems is quite easy, because I think the company need to shift their relationship from short term to long term, and at the same time to reduce the amount of suppliers. So by doing so, they can focus on the valuable work and the cost stability, and the cost become more predictable. So that means can strengthen the risk management. So the dark side of this alternative is the suppliers fairly well developed IT capabilities, and the IT maturity will decrease. So the third problems we're talking about is the long order to delivery process. And to solve these problems, there are three alternatives. The first one, make process and products globally common. This is what I mentioned for the first problem. And the second is to eliminate the organizational and process redundancies. And the third one is IST deployed to overcome constraints. So by doing so, realize the huge economies of scale. So that means saving costs. And the second is improve customer satisfaction and eliminate information flow constraints and enhance material flows and reducing inventory. Also, there are some dark sides that the additional cost and like availability if something goes wrong. So these are what we're talking about these problems. Thank you for listening.
Ford Motor Company supply chain strategy, best solution and implementation plan. The implementation plan is to take advantage of Ford's size and global presence, achieving the advantage in size and scale in their movement toward industry consolidation. Restructuring plan was Ford's 2000 merging its North American, European, and international automotive operations into one single global organization. They use techniques as far as cost reductions by engineering and globalizing corporate organizations and processes. Product activities consolidated into 5 vehicle centers. These 5 vehicle centers were responsible for development of vehicles in a consumer market, eliminating organizational and process redundancy, and realized huge economies of scale in manufacturing and purchasing. For best solutions for Ford was to use the new global approach that technology be employed to overcome their constraints, usually imposed by geography on information flow. Keep Ford production systems so that the Ford manufacturing operations were more leaner and more responsive and more efficient. Extend its information technology by using the Dell processes model of supply chain. And finally, moving from their push to pull process.
All right, this is regards to slide 9 for evaluation review. My review of the company is more likely than not. Any attempts to help out Ford from our end would be basically useless. The decline has started much earlier between the 80s and 90s. By the 2000s, especially the mid to late 2000s, they were on near collapse. Regards to what it'd be like after we implemented our solutions in a couple months, there would be some success in some of the other markets. Ford does have ground in some more four markets, but stateside it would not work. There would be no positive outcomes to them, and with the way they try to use Dell's model would require a severe restructuring of how their cars are sold. because there's existing infrastructure that Dell was able to use in order to get to their computer from their warehouse to the consumer with both public and private means. There is almost no such thing with that through most car manufacturers, as they require that middleman. They don't. They can't. They would have to get rid of those middlemen in order to take advantage of those of Dell's the way Dell functions. Unfortunately, that would cost a lot of jobs, and it would probably harm their business and their reputation much more than they already have. So overall, there's just nothing that could have been done. The IT work that's mentioned on the previous slide, I would not have helped. Ford's constant buying and selling of their licenses has turned their company and their stocks into junk, as mentioned on the last slide. By 2005, both Ford and their subsidiary GM corporate bonds had been downgraded to junk status. 2006, the company lost $12.7 billion. 2008, they sold off to the Jaguar and Land Rover operations to other companies. By November of 2008, along with Chrysler, they asked the federal government for a $9 billion loan that they would hopefully use to help restructure them like a Chapter 11 bankruptcy without any of the liquidity involved. On May 9th, however, clearly this has failed, because on May 2017, Ford announced that it would cut its global workforce and to address the company's declining share price, as at the time of that announcement, that their stocks on the would also been turned to junk status. And as of this year, Ford was going to discontinue their passenger cars, which is basically a vast majority of what you see on the road now, except for the Mustang and the Focus Active, which is the battery powered one. So even with this, I almost want to argue that we would probably have exacerbated Ford's decline if we attempted to implement these ideas. It's just that it's just that broken. The company is just that broken that on such a fundamental level that there would have been no feasible way for anyone really outside of a severe restructuring to save the company. So unfortunate, really, but that's the nature of it. Thank you for your time.